I'm going to do the presentation. I'll talk about an overview of it. Some of the work behind the scenes is really in depth. So I guess the caveat is if anybody wants any more information, it is on the Youth Justice Hub of the model that we've set up, but also we're constantly reviewing the documents as well. So I'm happy to provide any updates as part of delivering this session and the aftercare of that. So I might not go into too much detail, but equally, if there's some questions, there will be different points within the presentation to answer those questions. So just to give you a bit of an overview of who I am, I've been leading on the West Yorkshire Pathfinder. It was an 18-month project and it started in 2021. It did finish in October, but it has just been continuing. So I've been doing some work just ensuring that things are up and running within Bradford, and we are, we've been testing that pilot model out. So just to say, in terms of my background, I've been working within youth justice for about 18, 19 years, of which about 12 or 13 of that is within Bradford Youth Justice Service, predominantly managing out-of-court disposal work, diversion work, prevention work, and also I've worked in ISS in Leeds. I've managed a large youth project within the youth service within Bradford. So I've got lots of different experiences that I've brought to this Pathfinder. So just to give you a little bit of an idea how it was born, Bradford went through an inspection and it was a tough inspection. It was a challenging inspection and we had to assess where we was in terms of moving forward. One of the shining lights that came out of that inspection is that we got a good outcome for our out-of-court disposals, and we was just shy of outstanding on that section. So that gave us something to build on. I've been talking to Kate Barnett from the Youth Justice Board, and we got talking about some ideas. And what came out of this is a lot of the things that was being suggested we used to do some time ago, but with budget cuts and changes, unfortunately, they went. So it was about how we can reintroduce some of those back into our model that we're doing to try and improve that. In addition, we looked across West Yorkshire, so there was lots of inconsistencies. So there's 5 authorities across West Yorkshire, and there's a number of inconsistencies. So what we were finding is children would be getting justice by postcode. If they straddle, if there's a co-accused and they straddle 2 areas, one could potentially get a community resolution for the same offence and the other gets a youth conditional caution. So different areas were using different diversion models. Some areas didn't have any diversion in place. Some had, were starting that journey of child first diversion, but other things hadn't caught up, so that it wasn't in line with how West Yorkshire Police looked to make their decisions. So there was a bit of friction and discrepancy. So one of the discussions was how we can, across West Yorkshire, work as a partnership to try and create that consistent approach. In looking at the different areas, there was different knowledge, different understanding about diversion. And when I started this Pathfinder, there was no agreed dialect for how we would describe diversion. That's now come into place with the Youth Justice Board. They've put that out there. So that kind of gives us a common language that we can use when we're talking about diversion and not mixing it up with prevention. Across West Yorkshire, although the West Yorkshire Youth Justice Services work closely together, there wasn't necessarily a shared consensus about what diversion would be, how it would look, or whether it's backed up by theory, and anything to hang that on. So we didn't have that means to do that. There was work taking place, as I said, across West Yorkshire, but it didn't always reflect the change in research and theories. Someone was sticking quite rigidly to the out-of-court disposal process, and others were using that child first principles to try divert children away. Above all, I've got to say, everybody I spoke to in West Yorkshire, all the youth justice services, there was a real passion and commitment to look at diversion and look at how we can move that forward. Alongside this, each youth justice service was inspected during the start of the pathfinder. Leeds was a little bit before Bradford, we was next, and then the others was all inspected. They all required, they were all categorised as requires improvement. So what that meant is a number of the youth justice services had to make significant improvements in a short period of time. So the Pathfinder grant conditions were set. There was 4, but it wasn't just 4. Within that, there's the job description and lots of other actions that needed doing in the terms of reference. But I've just put these into 4. So we had to work closely with Lancashire. They was a little bit ahead of us in terms of they developed a diversion model specifically around community resolutions and how to manage those and move those over to other agencies to get that support. We had to work. I've had to work across West Yorkshire to create a consistent offer across the region, to coordinate the chance to change pilot, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and develop a dissemination strategy of which one is to do this presentation. So, and as I'm starting, I just want to say a big thanks. Within starting this, I had to look for places for both peer support and areas of good practice. So I've spoken to a number of different areas. We've got Lancashire, Gloucester, Kate Langley at the Youth Justice Board. We've got the Centre of Justice Innovation, who have been fantastic support and giving lots of different information and advice. Got Lisa Morgan at Portsmouth Youth Justice Service, Tracy Green at the Youth Justice Board, Tom Dukes from Cheshire, Siobhan Bath, and the Pathfinder Steering Group that's been there to support us. And just at the top, there's James Thistlewood, Inspector James Thistlewood, who has kind of been at my side through this Pathfinder. Unfortunately, he's moved off to get another job in a different area, but unfortunately couldn't be with us today. But you know, I've got a lot of thanks for James supporting me along the way. So we had to build a case. We had to look at why is it a good idea? We've heard the Youth Justice Board saying it's a good idea. We're hearing evidence is a good idea, but how do we actually know that it's a good idea? And as part of doing the research, I had to spend hours and hours and hours reading, researching, looking online, reading policies. I can't tell you the amount of hours that's gone into that research and producing a report, and just so I get fully understood about diversion and the pros and cons of it, and so that I'm able to then sell the process and sell what we're trying to do. So it came out at the time when the YJB's implemented the Child First principles. The police have rolled out their child-centred policing and best practice framework. I had to look at the evidence of different diversion models and the benefits, looking at reoffending, the positive outcomes, and for the child, the family, and the victim. Crucially, that's who it's about. Equally, it's important that we are protecting the public and also keeping the child safe when we're constantly thinking about implementing a new diversion program. Crucially, diversion cannot be provided by one service alone. I've got to say this is really changing over the last couple of years. Once upon a time, it was anything linked to a child getting into trouble with the police would automatically go to the Youth Justice Service. And ultimately, we probably didn't realise that we were winding in the net by bringing them children into the Criminal Justice Service. They don't have as good opportunities of those that have been diverted. So without realising, we thought we was doing what we thought was best, and we delivered a good service. However, some of the evidence is saying if we can divert them away from the Criminal Justice Service, they will get better outcomes. The big change as well is, really treating children as children. I've been in a number of different meetings where we are still seeing them as offenders, and almost seeing them as the problems, but not acknowledging where they've come, the trauma they might have experienced, the support they might have had on the way. And it's just about trying to break that down and just see children as children. And so much is changing the language, calling them a child. Just within the last year, 2 years, even if I go back and look at the work that I've done, you're still changing the language to make it much more child friendly. So there's lots of evidence out there. I've got that in the report. We know that bringing children into the criminal justice system, their deepening involvement gives them more negative consequences. They have a criminal record. The labelling interrupts education. The list goes on. So it's about what we could do different. It's about thinking about the language that we use. We still see talking about them as offenders, perpetrators, and all that kind of negative labelling language. So it's about trying to change that, and that's what we're doing within our service. Just in terms of this diversion model, we need to recognise that, where needed, court will always be the right place, especially if it's serious or contested cases, or for children that are persistently committing crime. So within this model, we are looking at this as the lower end, so potentially gravity score 3 and below. There is a caveat to that if it's 4 with mitigating circumstances, which we'll discuss later. So what I had to do is I've had to look at the driving policies. It was really important that I've got on board with these and learned that language, learned the lingo, especially when liaising with West Yorkshire Police and just trying to get that buy-in. And I must admit, it has been challenging at times. We've come up against a number of different barriers, and it's about how we've looked to navigate that. And by quoting lots of child-centred policing, apologies for that, child-centred policing policy, we've helped that move forward, and it's talking in that language to get that point across, and mixing that with youth justice language as well. So in terms of looking at Bradford, what I found is there's no one thing that will solve all the problems around diversion and reduce first-time entrants. So I've had to look at this as a multi-pronged approach. I work closely with prevention services across Bradford, which they're going to be guest speaking later on. It's important that we put support in for children to help kind of slow their chances of coming into contact with the criminal justice system. There's youth community resolutions. So once they do tip into that, it's how we look to manage those. And then the biggest part of what we've been looking at in Bradford is creating opportunities to divert children. What I found is once they get past the community resolution, they were tripping into the traditional outcomes of the youth caution, youth conditional caution, and we had no way to divert those away. We did have what's called chance to change, which I'll touch on that in a little while, but that was only a one chance. And then after that, there was no further opportunities to divert children. And it was interesting. I can best describe it as a speed awareness course. Adults, when they get into trouble speeding, they get an opportunity to learn from their mistakes, sit a course, and hopefully learn the error of their ways. Whereas for a child, they get brought into the criminal justice system. And equally, we know that children do get into trouble. They do, some choose what they did, and others don't. It's purely by accident, and they come then into the criminal justice system. And it's about how we look to work with those children. Within the research, there is 2 different categories which we're looking to focus on, and ours is the earlier side. Those that are more entrenched in that behaviour, more systematic in getting into trouble with the police, they will then unfortunately move into the criminal justice system to be managed. And hopefully in Bradford, we're taking a trauma-informed practice way of working with those children. So this is aimed specifically at the earlier children, young people. So we created, as a pathfinder, we set up a steering group, and as the group, we looked to create we did a benefits model with support from the Youth Justice Board. It was something that they were looking to roll out. And crucially, this just gives us an overview of where we're trying to get to, what we're trying to do. So we're trying to improve the decision making, get the feedback from CPS around decisions, reduce first time entrants. That's crucially what we're trying to do. This is a big focus from the Youth Justice Board, both within West Yorkshire and across the country. We're looking to reduce the amount of children that go through court. It's a traumatic experience. And what we were finding in the research, children are still being referred to court where they could have been considered for an out-of-court disposal. So we really need to get to grips with that and just try to address that. We wanted to improve the process so that it's standardised across West Yorkshire, reduce the risk of reoffending. That's another benchmark of mine. It's all right looking to divert all these children, but if they're just going out reoffending and getting into further trouble with the police, then it's a bit of an own goal. So we've got to ensure that we've put a robust programme together to support that child and the family to help them move forward. And we want to reduce the calls for service with the police. So hopefully there'll be some financial and time saved for West Yorkshire Police. We want to improve the outcomes for children. And again, it's about reducing disproportionality. We know that certain children from different ethnic backgrounds are highly represented in different areas across the Youth Justice Service. So it's about how we look to address that. This is just some more theories about what we look to do in terms of the programme. So it's about, we really want to minimise the labelling of our children, avoid the net widening. So if we've got a good programme, what we're finding is, well, if the Youth Justice Service have got a really good programme or the new diversion team, can we send them through? And where it may have been previously NFA'd, we need to ensure that they're not being sent through and ultimately widening the net. We don't want to overdose the children. So it's about offering the right support at the right time. A light touch, it needs to be informal, it needs to be away from the Youth Justice Service so that child's not being labelled. We see all our children away from the Youth Justice building. They're all seen in community venues and different places across the community or at their home address as well. So just want to talk about the Centre for Justice Innovation. I'm not sure if I hope you've heard of them, explain what they do and how they support it. So once I've done all the work, I've gathered all the research, we've got the steering group in place, I'm building up the network of people that I know and the different key people in different agencies across both Bradford and West Yorkshire. It's about selling that idea. So it's about, if you are looking to do something like this, so crucially, it's about selling that idea. It's about gathering that information, put a really strong rationale. And someone best described it that when trying to do something like this, create a 4-minute presentation that you could deliver to someone. So, for instance, or shorter, whereas if you was in a lift or you were walking with someone, could you explain the whole process within 4 minutes? So had to do that. I've worked with the head of CPS for Yorkshire and Humber to get them on board. I've done countless presentations just to explain what the process is, what we're trying to do. Presentation, and worked with the West Yorkshire Police Crime Registrar. We've got the Bradford superintendent that oversees youth justice in Bradford. The other crucial thing is whether you've got a mayor or a PCC, that you need to get them on board, keep them fully updated. This is potentially, when rolling out a diversion model, it is covering within their sort of jurisdiction, but also it could impact on the residents of the area that you're working with. So it's important to, explain the process, what it's about, and that it's backed up with theories. I've spoken to various councillors. We've got a West Yorkshire Youth Justice Scrutiny Board that's a multi-agency partnership. We've got the Police Criminal Justice Unit, some of which we'll be speaking in a short while. I've done presentations at the Reoffending Board. One of the crucial things is, as well, is when going to speak to different agencies, if you can get support from someone from another area that's done that model, that's from the same service. So the best way to describe it is, you need a cop to speak to a cop. Someone from the police can really explain the process, how it works in police terms, much more better than what I can. So I'm really thankful that we had Lancashire on board that would help do that. And the other thing is court staff as well. So getting the court staff on board. So should this come up within a court arena, they can explain the process and what that's about. So we pulled the model together. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But we got the green light from the West Yorkshire Police Chiefs Officer team. Sorry about that. The West Yorkshire Police Officer team. And that took a long time, but thankfully it was the summer of last year, August of last year, they gave us the green light. So it's a significant change on the pre-court work that's been delivered. It's already within Bradford significantly lowering first-time entrants, which is absolutely crucial, what we're monitored about. It's a significant change for children, and it creates positive outcomes. It speeds up the RJ process. So by getting a quicker outcome, they can get that quicker support and an opportunity to engage in some restorative justice work. There's less bureaucracy, so hopefully it should be more cost effective and time saving. And there's a real increased demand on pre-court work at the moment. So it's about 60-40%. So I've got the position statement from West Yorkshire Police. This might be a good time. I've got Chief Inspector Alan Travis. Are you there, Alan?
Just come in and give a little bit of police perspective, Phil, from this. Is that okay?
I think that'd be really good. Do you want me to leave that position statement up?
You can do, yeah. I'll talk around it briefly and just a few other bits. So
okay, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, good afternoon. As Phil mentions, I'm Alan Travis. I'm one of the Chief Inspectors in West Yorkshire from our Central Criminal Justice team. So I sort of head a small team that's got central oversight for the force around a number of things, but one of those is diversion and reducing reoffending, hence sort of our involvement in this work with Phil. Obviously, a large part of what we do is looking at how we can deal with people outside of the formal criminal justice system through out-of-court disposals and more recently sort of outcome 22. We've obviously always had a real focus on children and a close working relationship with the local youth justice services and see the real benefit of child diversion. But obviously this piece of work that Phil has pulled together has allowed us to form much better relationships with those local groups and really sort of work to embed this more with our officers. It's been a little bit of a journey for us in West Yorkshire around sort of out of court work. We were one of the two-tier pilot forces back in 2015, which saw us move away from the old suite of out of court disposals and lose a lot of things like cannabis warning, PNDs, simple cautions, and we're just left with community resolutions and conditional cautions. But that has acted really at that time as a bit of a springboard for us around our culture around diversion and the use of those kind of programs, particularly around youth community resolutions, youth conditional cautions, and outcome 22 when that was introduced in 2019. Phil's obviously going to talk about it more, but that work was further enhanced in 2021 when we sort of agreed to be one of the 2 pilot forces for the Chance to Change programme, which was introduced in response to sort of the Lammy report to tackle disproportionality around out-of-court diversionary opportunities for children from ethnic minorities, and particularly Black children, just linked to the fact that the data was suggesting they were less likely to admit offences to the police, and therefore less likely to receive sort of out-of-court and diversionary activities. So that work has sort of gone hand in glove with obviously the Child First Pathfinder that Phil has been working on. As mentioned, one of the key things for us has been getting support from the Chief Officer team around this. I think we're fortunate and we've got quite a forward-looking Chief Officer team, but there still had to be conversations with around them just to really get them on board around this approach. Particularly due to some of sort of the impact that it could potentially have on our positive outcome rates, so to speak, because without boring you with the details, police forces are judged on their sort of positive outcome rates in relation to crimes, and that includes the number of youth conditional cautions, etc., that we issue. So there was a small risk that this programme could reduce those positive outcome rates and potentially look bad for the force if it was taken out of context. But we sort of obviously communicated well with the Chief Officer team, got them on board. They do really have that mindset around child-focused diversion. And when we started actually unpicking a lot of the data in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small matter for us. So some really excellent engagement right throughout the process. Getting the Chief Officer team on board and behind this has been absolutely key, as has been the close work with Phil and my central criminal justice team. So just sort of to summarise, entirely supportive of this work, engaged closely throughout, and we see it from a policing perspective as a really positive move towards diverting more children away from the formal criminal justice system, not just because of the benefits it will bring them as individuals, but ultimately in sort of reducing future offending, better outcomes for victims and demands on us as the police service. That's all, Phil, thanks.
That's brilliant, thank you, Alan. Any questions for Alan or myself just before we move to the next part? No.
It's me, Phil. Hannah. We should have Claire on the call.
Brilliant.
Thank you to Phil for inviting me to speak today. So a quick introduction. So my name's Claire Ely. I am the head of innovative practice at the Centre for Justice Innovation, and I am responsible, I guess, for the sort of practice development team here at the centre. So the centre is a small UK-based charity. We seek to put practitioners and evidence at the heart of justice reform, and we're made up of a practice team, my team, a research team, and a policy team. And our current areas of focus include diversion, so youth and in adults, and we've been working in youth diversion since about 2014. We also do work in court reform, community sentences, and in family courts with the family drug and alcohol courts. We receive most of our funding from philanthropic trusts, meaning our support is often free on the point of delivery. So just an overview of what I'm going to cover today. Has the slide moved along?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So as an overview of what I'm going to cover quickly, I'm going to do a quick summary of our support to Bradford, which I think Phil has already mentioned a bit about. I'm going to give you a sort of overview of the national picture from our work with a number of areas, and then a quick update on our future work and how you can get involved. But I'd like to start with saying a huge congratulations to Phil and his colleagues and all their partners for their amazing work in developing and implementing the Child First diversion work in Bradford. I know it's been a really long process, but it's absolutely fantastic to where you've got it to now. So let's move on to what we did with Bradford. So our support offer started with Phil back. Phil, I didn't realise it was quite this long ago, but back in September 2021 to support the West Yorkshire Pathfinder. And so in partnership with Phil, we devised a support plan of what that would look like. So one of the key sort of things we did was act as a critical friend. So we know starting anything new in the youth justice system or the criminal justice system in general is tough and it can be exhausting. And a large part of our support to Phil and his colleagues was providing a sort of space to talk through plans, discuss challenges facing, and at times it could be a bit of a shoulder to cry on as well when things got tough. But we used our knowledge of evidence and research and our links with other youth justice services and other police forces to develop solutions or to put Phil in touch with other people who were doing similar things and sort of learn from them. We also did a bit of reviewing draft plans and protocols and giving feedback. And we also co-delivered with Phil and his colleagues a workshop, which was in person. And because of the funding that we have, we were able to provide lunch. So that's always nice. And then we also are now sharing and promoting Bradford's work with the other youth justice services and partners. And that's like a really key part of what we do and the support we do, because in every area that we've worked with nearly sort of 50 now, we always learn new things about how to put effective diversion practice put effective diversion into practice locally. So it's really great to be at this event today and learn some more. So on to the next slide. So diversion in a national picture. So I'm sure most of this won't be a surprise to everyone on the call, but I'm going to go through a few challenges and area of focus that have come up in the work that we do with other areas and other partners. So as well as supporting sort of practitioners delivering diversion in youth justice services and police areas, we also work closely with the YJB, the NPCC and the Youth Endowment Fund. And there's been much progress over recent years in the availability of diversion across England and Wales. And it's a huge and important area of work, which is finally getting the attention it deserves, which we're really pleased about. However, in any sort of work with children, it's important that we reflect and review to better understand how we're working with the children, what is working, what isn't working, because things change all the time, evidence becomes available that's new. So we need to make sure that we keep kind of on top of that. So a few areas that have been highlighted to us in our work that we need to sort of review or look at in more detail are some of these that we've got up here. And this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just a sort of summary of some of them. So the senior stakeholder understanding and valuing diversion. So there's a few practitioners that have told us that they sort of are frustrated that sometimes partners at senior levels, locally and nationally, do not understand what diversion is or how they can support this work. And these partners include social care, education and senior police. And I'm talking sort of ACC sort of level. And that's not in every area, just some. And we're working with the Youth Endowment Fund at the moment to publish some guidance later on in the year for this audience to encourage more senior buy-in and support for diversion. So if you are an area where you think this works really well or an area where it doesn't work so well, I'd love to hear from you so we can share your experiences for this guidance that should be out later on in the year. Then we move on to tackling disproportionality, and I heard a little bit of a discussion just now as I came on the call, and I know it's something that West Yorkshire are working on, but we know it's still a major issue within the youth justice system that needs attention, and that, you know, diversion isn't immune from this. And within that, there are sort of things that have come up again, time and time again. So stuff around Gypsy Roma traveller children being overlooked in this discussion, and sometimes eligibility criteria that's put in place can unfairly affect their engagement with the process. There's also other things within eligibility criteria that can exacerbate disproportionality, and I think it's something we need to review and keep an eye on, such as, you know, having an exclusion about the number of previous convictions or arrests that a child has had, when they maybe are from a community that is often policed more. So it's those kind of things you have to think about. We've also seen some stuff where a families sort of, they're not a traditional makeup of a family, and then that has called into question whether the child will be able to complete the diversion. And I think that's something we need to be a bit aware of and tackle if we see that's happening. And then finally, another sort of really key thing that's come out of our work, and we did some research recently with young people about their experiences of diversion, that came out was how understanding a child's experience of racism, prejudice and discrimination, and how this might affect their relationship and engagement with the criminal justice system and the practitioners, is often overlooked. So we're not asking children about their experiences as part of an assessment and thinking about how that might then change the way we work with them. And there's some great work happening in Hackney where they've embedded this into every assessment. They have a conversation with the child and their family about what that might look like to them and how they've experienced racism or prejudice in their lives. And we're really pleased actually to see that this will be included in the new asset tool that's going to come out soon, that the YJB is putting together for diversion and out of court disposal cases. And then moving on, we've got working with solicitors. So again, practitioners, and I'm sure this won't be a surprise again to you, have expressed frustration with solicitors advising children to go no comment and interview, and that's routinely highlighted to us as a barrier to diversion. However, and I think that's an important thing that we need to discuss and work on, but there's also other issues around sort of solicitors and working with children that have come up, that have been identified by children themselves. So some of the things that they've told us, that they're not understanding what they're being told by the solicitors who had given them advice. They also a lack of trust in their solicitor, which is something that needs addressing, and also being told incorrect information. So we've seen in some of our observational interviews where children are given advice that their criminal record will be off their record by the time they're 18, which we know is not true. It depends on what that is. And that's not just a thing that we've seen solicitors do, actually. We've seen youth justice practitioners and police give that advice. And we do have a very complicated criminal record system. So it's understandable that those mistakes are made, but we do need to make sure that we are providing correct advice to children. So again, this is something else that we're going to look into and do some work on. And we're also investigating the role of appropriate adults as well in police stations and the role that they offer. And if that's something you want to be involved in, please get in touch. Next thing is how effective is deferred prosecution? So it's often touted as part of the solution to address disproportionality. However, there's a real variation in practice and there's a lack of guidance. And obviously there's some pilots going on. West Yorkshire has been involved in that. And this might have already been mentioned, but again, the Youth Endowment Fund is funding a full analysis and publications of results from the Operation Turning Point pilot, and are working with West Yorkshire Chance to Change pilot to analyse their results. So keep an eye out for this. I think there'll be some interesting stuff coming around deferred prosecution and how we can work more effectively with children using this. And then turnaround funding and its impact on diversion practice. So this is obviously very welcome and provides a greater opportunity for the youth justice services to support more children and keep them safe. However, practitioners have told us that the broad eligibility criteria and the routes into referral present some challenge. So the programme has widened the opportunities to work with children. So it includes those released under investigation. It also includes some children at court in specific circumstances. But what we need to be careful of is that when areas design their new programme of work for this funding locally, they ensure they continue to deliver the service that is in line with the evidence and the best practice that we have, and it doesn't net widen and overdose, which is always a bit of a concern when there's kind of new money or a new programme of work. So that's just a sort of air of caution, I suppose. And then finally, effectively identifying and supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities and neurodiversity is something, again, that's been raised a lot by police and youth justice services about how they can be better at doing this as part of their diversion offer. So just to finish off with our future work, as part of our funding that we have, we are going to be doing some additional work around the SEND issue. And we know that from recent evidence and research that's come out from the UK that there's a real overrepresentation of children with special educational needs. And it's a significant challenge in need of urgent attention and action. So to help sort of address this, we're going to undertake some research to explore the responsiveness of the youth justice system for children and young people with special educational needs and in diversion. And we'll be centering this on the voices of children and young people. And we also plan to interview youth justice staff and police colleagues in 2 areas. So if you're interested in learning more about this research, or you'd like to be one of the areas that's in this research, please do get in touch. We've had a few people contact us and express their interest, which was great. But if there's anyone else who would like their area to be a part of this or are doing great work that they want to share, please do let me know. And then finally, our free support offer continues. So the work that we've done with Phil, we can do with you. So if you would like to work with us or would like to learn more, please do let me know. There's an email address here on this slide. It's for Bami, my colleague, who was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately isn't well. But if you use that address, it will get through, or ask Phil and he'll share my contact details with you. Thank you very much.
That's lovely, Claire. Thank you. I mean, I can't endorse your work enough, really. I guess best way to describe you is almost like a diversion Google. So any head scratching, I'm just thinking, I can't get around this, or I'm not able to make inroads. Can you do anything? You'd almost provide the information as levers. So, and also your network across the country, really.
Yeah.
So I've got this problem. How do I get around it? And you'll put me in touch with someone to speak with. So, but you know, please look at the Justice Innovation website. There's lots of newsletters. There's all the theory and evidence backing up why we should be doing diversion. There's a cost calculator which we used in the early stages, which is fantastic, and to get that buy-in. Just a couple of comments. Just you've kind of triggered a few comments. So just to say that all the slides will be shared, and everybody that's guest speaking today, there's contact details on there as well. So that's all covered as well. Lots of the documents that we refer to or talk about are already on the Youth Justice Resource Hub. Clint, you mentioned about CPS. They're crucial to get on board. They are. We've been thankful. We've had Julian Tanakal supporting us through this process, kind of saying what we can, what we can't do, or what we could explore. He's been absolutely integral to the development of this model, and just briefing his CPS staff so that they're aware of that. If they're getting contacted by police who are looking for advice, that they're aware of the process and can explain that. Someone's also just mentioned about you know, the police being able to explain what the options are. Hopefully I'll come on to that in a little while. Okay, thank you, Claire. I know you've got another meeting, so has anybody got any questions for Claire? Because I know she's got to go to a meeting. No. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I mean, people feel free to email me or my colleague Bami, and we'll answer any questions. And thank you so much, Phil, for having me today. And apologies for being a bit late. But massive congratulations.
Brilliant. Cheers. See you soon.
Bye.
Kind of carrying on from Chief Inspector Alan Travis, we've got the West Yorkshire position statement. So that's kind of our overarching now. That's just backing up what we're trying to do and how we move forward in terms of developing the diversion process. So it's just it's endorsing what we're doing. So if we're speaking to any other agencies, we can explain that we've got that, and that's our cover for what we've been doing. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the model and what it looks like. There's a whole host behind the scenes. There's a massive amount of diagrams, flowcharts, and everything that backs this up. There's one in particular, and it's about how the police make that decision. I'm going to just talk about it rather than bringing everybody to it. And hopefully I've got Brian online as well, just in case. Brian, are you there?
Yes, Phil, I'm here. I wouldn't dare let you down, mate.
And have we got Simone as well?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
You're
right?
there. That's brilliant. It's just in case I miss anything. So Brian and Simone are both from the Criminal Justice Unit. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, hi. My name is Brian Thackeray. I'm the force subject matter expert for out-of-court disposals generally across the force in West Yorkshire. I take part in various national meetings, things like that. So I've come on board as the person that's got the knowledge, if you like, to make it work.
Brilliant. And Simone?
Hi everybody, I'm Simone Stacey and I'm Sergeant at Criminal Justice. I work with Brian, Mr. Travis and also Inspector Richards. So I've been involved in this process more so over the last few months, and I've also contributed the full app on this. So yeah, very happy to be here today, and obviously we'll answer any questions.
That's brilliant. So Brian, you've been a big support in terms of producing these diagrams and flow charts, and just can we do that? How do we do that? If we want to do that, how do we get around that? And Simone, you've kind of hit the ground running. You've taken over James Thistlewood, and yeah, again, being that support that I need from the Police Criminal Justice Unit. So just to give you a bit of behind the scenes, really, we have been operating an outcome 22 model called the Chance to Change. That was based on the Lamy report, and it's to address disproportionality. And that was aimed predominantly for those where there'd been no comments. And what we wanted to do is, rather than those get sent to court to be dealt with, it's about how do we, if they agree voluntarily to engage with us, how can we work with them, support them, help them move forward without them being criminalised. And we know from the Lamy report and the evidence that some children from various communities have a real distrust in services and the police, and from the get-go are told from an early age to go no comment. In addition, we also acknowledge that sometimes that's legal advice to go no comment until things have been moved on a little bit further. So unfortunately, those children were getting criminalised. Had they admitted the offence, they would have got an out-of-court disposal, where we were finding they were getting catapulted into the court arena. And some of those children were a young age as well, sort of 10, 11, 12. So we looked to implement that. That was an MOJ pilot. It did start in Leeds in 2019, moved to Bradford in early 2020, and then moved around the various West Yorkshire areas. It's been ongoing. It's been going really well. As Claire alludes, all the data is currently being crunched at the moment and evaluated. So hopefully we will know some of the outcomes there. That's being done by the Youth Endowment Fund. And just to say that the work is also being evaluated and was commissioned by the Ministry of Justice and the Barrow Cadbury Trust as well. So we had hoped to have the evaluation outcome ready. We've been waiting for that for a little while, and that's why there's been some delays to having this event, because we thought we would do that in partnership, but unfortunately it's not going to be ready until and the learning event won't be until mid-July. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. So yeah, the research project's being done by Manchester Metropolitan University. So I've been told that the invites will come out soon, so please keep an eye out for that. I'll ask it to go into the Youth Justice Board bulletin, and that just gives us that reassurance that what we're doing is right. I've got some information to demonstrate that we believe it's right, but that would just give us that sound evaluation to back that on. So in terms of the model that we've proposed within West Yorkshire, so it will operate as a deferred outcome using outcome 22. We'll use the Chance to Change name. It's already the branding across West Yorkshire. We liked it as well. It's very child first. It kind of says what it does on the tin, which is exactly what we want, and it's easy to explain to the child about what this is. There did used to be tight criteria on the previous model, so we didn't have many young people going through that. So we've removed a lot of that, and pretty much children would be considered. At first, they may be considered for a community resolution. If that's suitable, they will go down that route. Anything where a community resolution is not suitable and it's gravity score 3 and below, then they can be considered. It could be gravity score 4 with mitigating circumstances, but that would need inspector sign off. Within this, the only things, there's a bit of a caveat, we can't do weapons at this moment in time. We've looked and explored it, and at this moment in time, the force guidance is that we need to go down a caution or court route. So it's an area that we're looking at, but at this moment in time, we've not been able to move forward. In addition, motoring offences as well, by virtue of the DVLA guidance, we're not able to take those at the moment. So just what I said, we've widened the criteria. As part of the test model that we did with the last one, we did a randomizer. So we split them into groups. One would get what they would have got normally, so that might have been a caution or court, and the others would go into the test group where they would get the chance to change. It will go on. Brian, do you want to add anything there at all? Just in terms of the process or the policy and the guidance behind that?
Yeah, Phil, okay, I'll come in on a brief sort of technical point there. As Phil has mentioned, the Youth Justice Board guidance has been, since the last part of 2012, changed the youth landscape. It's always been that the first offence for any offender would always be a police-only decision, and that then any subsequent offending would be referred to a youth offending panel, a joint police and youth justice service decision. We had a bit of an issue enforced with that, because it became rather complicated, in that if you were going to give a community resolution for a first offence, it was fine, the officer was used to that, he could issue it on the street. If they wanted to issue a youth caution of any sort for a first offence, then the idea was we wanted it to be a youth conditional caution. But if you wanted a youth conditional caution, the legislation said we had to refer it to the youth panel for them to set the conditions, and that led to some issues with the panels. So what we've done is we've slimmed it completely down, and essentially, as Phil's just alluded to, if it's a first offence, if the officer can give a com-res, he does. If he can't, for a first or a second gravity matrix 1 or 2 offence, then he gives the com-res. If it's a 3 or a 4 or a 1 or a 2 that cannot get a com-res, either due to admission or whatever, then it will go to the panel to be looked at first, and they will apply their child first principles. Consequently, we see that, or we feel that what's going to happen is, for your gravity matrix 3 and 4 slightly more serious offences, youths are going to be given the option of chance to change as a first option, rather than being thrown straight in with a youth conditional caution. So that'll cut down your first time entrance. And also, we're going to make sure that there is a youth justice sergeant on the panel, rather than just the PC that's there at the moment, which will make the decision making much more robust, and it'll mean that the people that are on the panels are a lot more appropriately trained to deal with it from our side of things. So hopefully, Phil, you'll be well happy with the way we're moving on with this one, and we're trying as level best to work as best as we can within what we're allowed to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. So just in terms of further points, children that go no comment or non-admissions will still be given the same opportunity. They can access the chance to change. If they're absolutely adamant that they didn't do it, they still have that right to justice, and they'd go to court for that consideration. The difference here, children will be given multiple opportunities where appropriate. We need to use child first principles rather than just a one-off opportunity. And some of the evidence and research demonstrates that when it's just a one offer, it doesn't have as much impact. So if we go one offer and then up to cautions, you know, that significantly impacts on the positive outcomes of that child. So we've built in multiple opportunities. We're saying up to 4 with inspector sign off. We can go up to 3, and the best way to describe it is we put the foot on the ball then and just kind of think about what we're offering. Is it working? Has the previous interventions and support worked? Or are we setting this child up to fail? And we need to look at the time that's elapsed between the incidents and the serious nature between them, and also previous compliance. We've changed it. Before, we used to have a strong rationale to do diversion and put that in place. Now we're saying there needs to be a strong rationale as why that child should get a caution, as opposed to a child first alternative outcome. We are in discussions with the CPS at the moment about children returning to court. One crucial thing is once they are on the way to court, it's incredibly difficult to then divert them to something else. The guidance is that they should receive a caution. So we are looking at that as we speak. We're trying to address that. We're waiting for the new case management guidance and whether that can be picked up. But it's crucially, it's about building that trust in this model that it works and the results. We can demonstrate the results as well. So just in terms of the overview of the process, and then I'll get our police officer, Amanda Baldis, who you know, is absolutely integral and has been really good within this process as well. So above all, we use child first principles. Historically, by virtue of what a child did and how many times they did it, it would almost equate to what outcome they would get. I must say there's been massive changes across West Yorkshire and within Bradford about how we look to divert those, really acknowledge where that child's come from, what trauma they've experienced, whether they've got any disabilities or speech and language issues and things like that. So we look at a whole host of things. Now, I know a lot of this goes on in lots of other areas. I think as part of this research and putting the model together, you will see a lot of things that's already been done. I've pulled things that we've previously done and that we're doing now. I've pulled things from different areas, and it's just about pulling that all together into one process. Within our child first decision-making panel, we have speech and language input, we have health input, we have victim workers input. They contact every victim or attempt to contact every victim before the panel and feedback what their views are. We have a local assessment tool which should be completed within 20 days, ready for the decision-making panel. I'm aware that the Youth Justice Board are ongoing with their out-of-court disposal assessment tool, and it's in a pilot mode at the moment and being tested out. Have sight of that, and we've incorporated some of that within our out-of-court disposal assessment tool. We have a decision-making panel that's made up of parenting workers, health, the police, a youth justice service manager, right across the board, so that we can make that informed decision about what's best outcome for this child. And the police, so when a child comes in, they get screened to decide which way the best route is, and the police look at whether what different disposals they can get, and then that kicks in the process. Amanda, do you want to come in there and just explain about the current process, but also some of the frustrations that we used to have?
Hi, yes, hello everyone. I take it you can all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant, okay. So hi there, I'm one of the 2 police officers that work in the YGS here at Bradford. Frustrations, I suppose under the old scheme, when Chance to Change first was rolled out and introduced, we had a wonderful lottery called the randomizer, and you had a 50-50 chance of winning it, basically. And I think it was part of the initial rollout process, just to initially see how those kids that were successfully selected by the randomizer, which was a computerized generated result, how they would work and cooperate with YGS if they got successfully through to being worked with on a Chance to Change. But the difficulty with that, and one of the frustrations, is that a number of kids that were coming through that were eligible to be put through this randomizer lottery, there were kids that we were looking at here who would have been actually ideal candidates for it, who didn't get through, and subsequently then had to be processed through the YGS panel, looking at traditional out of court disposals, such as anything ranging from your comreses potentially all the way through to a YC and a YCC. So this fourth option opened up our menu of options, really, that we had available. And actually, now that the randomizer has been disposed of for Bradford, we can now look at the opportunity to use Chance to Change for every young person that's coming through now, but by officers investigating. What it also means as well is that certain limitations and restrictions and caveats that were in place previously have also been lifted. So, for example, if a child had already been through us once before for a Chance to Change, previously the randomizer meant that they wouldn't be eligible to come back again for that, but now we can potentially look at a second opportunity, as long as it's reasonable to do so and fits the offence and the circumstance. And also we might have an incident where maybe 2 or 3 kids have been involved in, say, a public order incident or something that may have happened, and we can now collectively look at each of those kids to give them the opportunity to work with Chance to Change, as opposed to having to select which ones are eligible for it and which ones are not. So the randomizer by default sometimes created a bit of an unfair balance if there were a number of kids coming through for the same incident, or even if they were all first-time entrants on the same incident and we just couldn't offer them a place on it, any of them, because simply there was more than one young person involved in the offending. So it's allowed us a lot more opportunity now to really open the doors a little bit and give diversion a real go, particularly with new young people that may be coming through for the first time, who don't quite hit the criteria for a first-time comrades, but just sit nicely at that little bit of an in-between mark before it escalates any further going into the YC and the world of YCCs. Does that all make sense?
It does. And I think crucially, Amanda, it gives us the framework to hang it on. I know when we didn't have this model, when we were in decision-making panel, youth justice was much more child first. And although our 2 police officers are child first, the policy and guidance wouldn't allow that. So there was worry and concern that would be picked up in scrutiny panel, and Rachel and Amanda were held to account. So you were in a bit of a challenging situation within some of them panels when the policy and the guidance wasn't there to support diversion. So this is kind of give us that opportunity to do that and just hang that on. So it's,
yeah, definitely.
It's, we've really seen some of the positives. Someone's just asked, does the panel meet person and virtually? During lockdown, we've had to do it virtually. We've moved back to face-to-face where possible. On occasions, it does have to go online, but by and large, we're trying to move, face-to-face. I get the biscuits, don't I, Amanda?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Someone's had, how do you capture the voice of the child and the views of the parent if the conditions are agreed before the meeting? So just on that, what we do is we go out and we speak to the child and the parent. We do that face to face for every child. We talk about the process. We explain what that looks like. We've developed a child-friendly leaflet that's gone through our speech and language, and that's shared with them. We explain the process and the different options. We explain about the panel and what that's about. So hopefully once that assessment's been done, there'll be some indication about what work needs doing with that child, and that discussion will take place. Once the decision's made in the panel, our police officer goes out to the child and young person along with the case manager, and they do what's called they do a contract, and that explains all the process in detail and what they're agreeing to do. So there's the conditions that should fit the incident that happened, but also alongside that there may be voluntary conditions. We can't add that to the chance to change conditions, but we then do a child-friendly plan with each of our children, where we sit down and explain what the different parts are, what that looks like, and the expectations of that. And that's reviewed at the end of the programme as well. So what does the RJ look like without admissions? We speak to the victim. We've created a chance to change leaflet where that's been through our speech and language workers as well, so that it's easily understood, and they explain the process. We do speak to the victims and explain that, you know, maybe the child's not admitting it, but they're willing to engage, and we talk about the positives of that. On occasions, there has been RJ meetings or the shuttle mediation where a child may have made some admissions about what they did or their role or some part of their role, and we can feed that back to the victims. Someone's asked what happens in the child's home. Presuming that means children's home. Well, as long as the 10-point plan has been, we have a 10-point plan in Bradford where that has to go through various stages before there's an agreement of whether they can be taken through or dealt with by the police. But we would pick those up and we would do the restorative justice work with whoever's in that provision, and that child will be given the same opportunity of the chance to change. We know from evidence that children living in children's homes are higher represented in the disproportionality figures, so we're keen to address that. Someone's got their hand up. John James.
Yeah, thanks. I'm being a bit greedy. I've got 3 questions. That's why I put my hand up instead of typing in the chat. I hope you don't mind.
Okay.
It was just about, like you said, about the voice of the child in every case. Does that include with community resolutions when we've been looking at, does that every single child, regardless of kind of outcome, you would get the voice of the child?
Community resolutions are a little bit different. Within Bradford, the police officer has that right to make that first decision. We currently have about 360 community resolutions in Bradford, so it's quite a big process. I'll talk a little bit later about that process. We had looked at triaging all of those and decided who is the best agency or support, the right time for that child. Previously, it used to go to liaison and diversion, of which Anna and Sam were both online here, but that changed towards the end, just as we start trying to roll out the model. As we were looking to implement that, Turnaround came in and said we can then work with those community resolutions with the new Turnaround team. So we've just put a hold on that, and we will, they'll be picking up them community resolutions. So we don't necessarily get the voice of the child about the decision on the outcome. It might be something where the police officer may need some advice about best options, and then we could look to speak to that child first and deliver that, of which some areas within West Yorkshire are doing that. But at the moment, we've got about 360 at the moment that's issued, so it's a lot of community resolutions.
Yeah, okay, that's really helpful. And I don't know if I've missed something or you're going to come on to it, but in terms of the chance to change provision that you offer, It's a deferred it's deferred prosecution by the looks of things.
Yeah.
And if they don't engage with that, is the only option then that you go to court, or can they get a straight caution or something like that?
It depends what the offence is and how and what their comments were. That Amanda, do you want to come in there, or Brian?
Yeah. Yes, I can do. I mean, if they've admitted the offence and for some reason there's potentially non-engagement or a refusal to engage in that chance to change process, then we can obviously look in Bradford at an alternative such as a youth caution based on admissions. If the offence was initially no commented or denied, but there is there's enough evidence, the officers are satisfied and the ROs are satisfied that there's a reasonable prospect of securing conviction because it is a deferred prosecution scheme, that option is always there then to return it back to the officer in the case to push forward with any charge or summons that they may wish to continue with. We have got a couple in the wings at the minute that are sort of like just bubbling away, where we think are they going to comply, are they going to comply, and they're up for debate and discussion at the moment. We haven't made a firm decision yet, but they're kind of just clinging on at the moment, and we are yet to discuss what happens next to them.
Yeah, they're pushing the boundaries. They're making us look at as new guidance and things like that. And we within that we've built mechanisms in. So if a child's not engaging, the police officer speaks to them, or the case manager issues a warning and goes out to the house to try and break down and understand why they're not engaging and what's happening. And the last resort is that they will go back to the police and the officer in charge, but they're very few and far between. Are there those, Amanda? You know, we're well in the 90% for in terms of engagement and compliance. So the few and far between, but we need to be on those because some of those are, you know, it needs to be addressed. We have to ensure that there's engagement in the process because that builds confidence in what we're trying to do. So this model would work. It's based on the exact same work as what we would do for a youth conditional caution and that kind of level of work. We invest in that, but equally, if the child just needs 2 or 3 meetings, that's fine. If they need more in-depth support, then we can do that as well. That's built into the system. Depends on that each child that comes through. Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, Phil. Just want to make the meeting aware that one of the main complications that we're experiencing, and we're trying to find a good way through it. I think you'll agree, Phil. It's taking a bit of digging through. When they come back having failed the chance to change, what we're allowed to do is restricted by the legislation in respect of what out of court disposal they could have received, and there is considerable how can I put it, confusion. I don't think I'm stressing it too much there, because if they come back and they have admitted it, then they can have a youth caution. But if they come back and they have said no comment in interview, then provided we had enough evidence to take to court in the first place, they could have a youth conditional caution instead. And the conditions on the youth conditional caution would be the same as were on the contract they signed for the chance to change, and it would just be shown as non-compliant. However, if it's come back and they have denied it in interview, that's when it has to go to court. And it's that difference, the anomaly, that you can have a youth conditional caution if you don't admit it, but you can't have a youth caution if you don't admit it, if you go no comment. And that's the thing that takes a bit of explaining away when you explain it to officers. And similarly with the community resolution, you can have a community resolution if you have admitted it, but you can't have a community resolution if you said no comment. So there's lots of ins and outs of the legislation of what we were allowed to do, and it does take some working out further on down the line, and I'm sure Phil will be able to explain a bit more later on, but that's the difficulty we've got from the police side of it.
And there is appetite to discuss this, isn't there, with the head of CPS for Yorkshire and Humber, just about we don't want some of these children catapulted into court when we could look to sort of do the diversion. But hopefully what we're finding is if when we're really selling the process and what it's about, they won't have that criminal record. They can engage in the work and they get that real buy-in. So we have a higher buy-in of children that have got the chance to change offer. So is that really incentive? And it's a real bonus for parents as well. And I'll come on to some of the comments from parents and children a little bit later, just so you get an idea of that. I'm just mindful of time. Those that have got, Simone, have you got a point that you wish to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, obviously based on that question of what happens if they don't comply with the contract. At the moment, our policy is that we'll go back to the YGS panel. It's for them to discuss, because obviously you might have instances where a child's breached the contract, but there may have actually been a good reason for that. So there is a lot of discretion there really, and it's down to professional judgment. So we're trying to empower the panels to obviously make those decisions based on all the factors. Just because the ERO, for example, has decided to do it as a deferred prosecution, it doesn't always automatically mean you will have to prosecute. It could be that they do get given that further opportunity for a conditional caution. But I just want to stress that if they do breach the contract as it stands in West Yorkshire Police, it doesn't mean they get a conditional caution shown against them. It's a decision that's still to be made by the panel, and there's almost like no right and wrongs really, because every child is different and every circumstance is different, and obviously the panel, those working with the child, will be aware of any ongoing risks or anything like that. So that was the first point. And then the second point was when someone previously did say, oh, so it is like a deferred prosecution scheme. It is, because the chance to change roll out with the randomizer, that was a deferred prosecution scheme. But it's still going to refer back to public interest tests, etc. Things change, and it doesn't mean you automatically have to prosecute if they breach it, but it's where you've got that evidence, basically, where you can. And secondly, with that outcome 22, we also have those cases where you don't have the evidence, or we're not going to investigate it any further because it's so low level, but the child's admitted it, and we might do pathways informally. So there are two kind of like outcomes to look at really, and it's important not to kind of confuse the two. But I do appreciate, with all the information that's being given out today, it can appear quite confusing. But it's just to be clear that no, just if they breach the contract, it doesn't mean that they have to be prosecuted.
Yeah. Thank you, Simone. I think once we've got going with it in Bradford, it's much more straightforward. But there still are children that come and test some of our policies and the ways that we're looking to try implement as well. I'm just mindful of time because we were due a break at 2:20, but we've taken some questions. Disan, would you mind just holding on to your question? I'll just do this last bit and then we will pick that up after the break. Is that okay? So just in terms of this is just a kind of flowchart really, what it looks like where we screen and look at a multi-agency approach. We're looking at how we can use that with the new turnaround funding, but also where a child doesn't hit that criteria of turnaround. We can potentially work with them still, but it wouldn't be classed as turnaround. But also, is there any other services that's better placed to support that child? And that just says how we sort of screen them and take them through it, which I've kind of talked about it. So in terms of our overarching principles for the panel, above all, we're trying to keep children out of the formal criminal justice service. We're ensuring that it's proportionate to the offence that's been committed. And crucially, the work that we're looking to do with that child and that plan we put in place is effective in reducing the risk of them getting into further trouble. So we don't just focus on the offence, it's about looking at different strengths and much more future focus how we can support that child moving forward, embedding them into services and support within the local community. Within the panel, we don't operate as a ladder approach, so by virtue of them committing to offences that they move up and not closer to going to court. That's not what we do. We look at each child individually. We look at how many times they've come into contact with the police and come through the process, where they're at, how long ago between incidents. We look at previous compliance, and we look at other factors related to that child's life, which I alluded to earlier. And we aim to look to deliver the best possible outcomes through interventions. We do restorative justice wherever possible. We do always try and include the victim's views within the out-of-court disposal assessment. And when we're in the panel, we take the victim's views on, but also we continually try exploring restorative justice elements. Even if it comes up and it's at a later date, we will look to explore it. Crucially, we're trying to divert children into other services where possible, so that they get the right support at the right time. Because, you know, our team, we're kind of moving away from the Youth Justice Service. We're rebranding, and we're trying to remove all names and all language associated with youth justice, so that that child doesn't feel like they are within the youth justice system. So, and we still have the range of options that everybody has, from community resolutions, NFAs, youth conditional cautions, charge to court. They are still all the host of different decisions we can make at the panel. I've just discussed that. A lot of that is about the seriousness. We look at the child's history, willing to engage, and that's a break. Can everybody see that graph?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's brilliant. So,
I'm
so
back,
I just
Phil.
want to go through some of the data that we've got at the moment. A lot of the data is on hold because it's currently being looked at as part of the evaluation, and we'll come out with the report and the learning from that. So, just to say, you know, when we started looking at, well, back in 2017, we had 338 first-time entrants, which is absolutely massive compared to what we're looking at now. So, you know, with the really high rates of first-time entrants, clearly the Youth Justice Board were looking at the reasons for this, and you know, asking us some challenging questions. You know, this also came up in our HMIP inspection, just about what we're looking to do to address that. So it was at a high in 2017. We've started, you can see where we've implemented a panel in 2018 to start trying to address that, to reduce that number, and then it's fallen year on year. You can see sort of 2021, it just plateaus and then it drops again, and that's when we implemented the first chance to change, and then it's continued dropping now. We get, it can range, I think on average it's about between 7 and 14 first-time entrants a month. When we get those, we deep dive those to just ascertain what are some of the reasons for that. Quite often it's policy related, so it might be motoring or a weapons offence where we have little room to negotiate that. So, but we do deep dive that, and where there's been lessons learned, where policy or procedures not being followed, then we will pick that up with either the officer in charge or their supervisor, and we try and address that. Just where we're picking them up in court, so if a child ends up in court where they should have been considered for an out-of-court disposal, then that's picked up there, and we raise that with the CPS and the Criminal Justice Unit to just find out what happened here and why an out-of-court disposal wasn't considered, or the chance to change. So we're trying to treat that as a learning opportunity. We acknowledge that once they are charged to court, it's very difficult then to get them, as I alluded to earlier, that, you know, move away from a traditional caution for that, and it's something we're looking at. So we do deep dive each and every one of them first-time entrants. I'm doing that on a monthly basis and producing a report just to look at, see if we can analyse that data to get a better understanding. That's still in the early stages at the moment. This is just some of our pre-court work across the Youth Justice Service, and it just shows you where we were in terms of youth conditional cautions and cautions a little while ago, and that's now been, as you would expect, they have now become chance to change, and it's looking at how we can demonstrate that that's a positive outcome for a child and reassure West Yorkshire Police, the police crime, the Mayor's office, those victims of the community that we're working with, that this is the right way to go about things, and that we are making a difference. Usually I've done a deep dive in terms of reoffending of children that get the different disposals. So what we found is those that get outcome 22. So this data has been taken. I've tracked it from a couple of years ago. The reoffending rate for those on an outcome 22 of the cohort was 22%, of which those that reoffended, there was 2 of them, and they went on to receive a youth conditional caution, and that was within that year of that being issued. Then if you compare that to those that was issued a youth caution at that time, there's a 28% reoffending rate for those, and of which those go on to much more higher disposals. So they were getting, they would go on to, those that reoffended would go on to a referral order. So you can see by virtue of the higher up tariff they go, they then go further up the system. And this is the same with the youth conditional caution. So again, it's a 28% reoffending rate. This is our data in Bradford, it's not for West Yorkshire, of which those, most of them went on to a referral order, which was, and then we had 2 that went up to a YRO. So this is within a year of being dealt with by the West Yorkshire Police and the support that was offered by the Youth Justice Service. So I guess this just demonstrates the positive impact that outcome 22 has on those children. There is a bit of a caveat that by virtue of some children that have committed offences, they would automatically get a caution depending on what the offence was. So we need to take that into consideration. That's for the weapons awareness. However, the others, this was part of our test phase. So this is where they were going into the test and control group. So lots of those that got the outcome 22 should have been at the caution level. So that's, it really does demonstrate the positive impact of what we're trying to do. The Youth Endowment Fund are going to take all of West Yorkshire's data to look at trends and dig much deeper. So this is just a sample, just to gauge that what we're trying to do. We can demonstrate that that's had positive impact on reoffending rates. Just in terms of West Yorkshire, we are doing a reoffending live tracker. So each of the areas we've selected 20 random cases of different disposals, and that's ongoing at the moment. We have to wait for a certain time elapsed before we can start looking at them. But that gives us a really good snapshot of what we're doing a little while ago is actually working, so we can change things a little bit quicker. So that's ongoing. I've talked about the evaluation a little bit earlier, so that's just there. Crucially, we want to know, is it making a difference? What's children and parents saying about that? So, we had a child saying committed an offence, was brought to the police. Couldn't believe how quick it escalated. He was someone that got a youth conditional caution at that time. He's learned his lesson, he's changed his behaviour, but he wished he hasn't got a criminal record, because that can have a real big impact on his future. So one of the case studies, just to share with you, we had a girl who was struggling with her own well-being, self-harming, and lots of different factors associated with that, but also violent to her stepfather and mother within the family home. Unfortunately, it boiled over a number of times, and the police was called in. She was offered the chance to change, which she took, and she's done some really good work. With the case manager, she needed a whole host of support, so we had a parenting support worker that was able to step in and support the parents of this. They had a health worker, so it was a real wraparound support for this child and this family. But one of the things is her father lives in he moves between the USA and Canada, and what this would have done is, with the old scheme, she would have got a caution of some sort, and this would have really hampered her opportunities for going into America or into Canada. So by virtue of getting the chance to change, she's been able to learn from what, the work that we've been doing with her, and it's not had that negative impact. And I think Dad just summed it up, and he just said, chance to change gave her an opportunity for a fresh start, as her future would have been dampened, especially as she needs to go back to USA and Canada to see her father. And we know that a criminal record would have really caused problems. Really thankful for the support that was given. So we've then got another child who is much more complex, been out of school for 2 years, and mum's been waiting for help and support for 2 years. They've fled domestic violence, so the child has experienced a lot of trauma, but also has some speech and language concerns that he needs support with. So they've been waiting for an appointment, and by coming through this, they've got the chance to change, and he's able to move on. He's still getting support at the moment. Things have changed. He's changed his friendship group. He's apologised to the victim, spoken to them, and give that apology. Mum's so glad that he got that support without getting that criminal record. There was 4 offences against the same victim, and issues around causing harassment, alarm, and distress. Unfortunately, there's been no further incidents, so that's another case example. Another one, we had a child where possession of 8 bags of cannabis, so that knocked the community resolution out. This was a child that was out late at night. There was concerns he may have been exploited. He lives in an area that's known for drug dealing, so it's right on his doorstep. But previously, he's a child that's been doing really well at school, but has just started, drifting into this circle. We strongly suspect he had all the hallmarks that he may have been dealing, even though the police could only deal with it with possession. They did look at P-wits, but there wasn't enough evidence to secure that. But he's moved away from his friendship group. He's learned a lot from that. He's back to school. He helps out with care within the family home and doing really well. And he's not got that on his criminal record, which Dad was so grateful of that it won't then impact on his future aspirations. He's gone back to school. He's doing really well. Someone asked earlier how we catch the views of children and young people. They've been consulted on the previous model, and we are gathering views of children ongoing at the moment. We've just developed these postcards, and it's just where children can just write a little bit about, if they had a superpower, what would they change within the service and provision? What can we learn from that? We're also rolling out, we've semi-rolled out, it's called MOMO, which is Mind of Their Own, which allows children to create a profile, connect with their case manager, share their views, ambitions, concerns. It's very much a strength-based package to gather views and build that relationship with the child, looking at the strengths and worries, future ambitions. And that can be reciprocated by the case manager as well, and that helps build that relationship. So we've kind of done a soft launch of that, and we are looking to launch it properly in July and August. as we're running a big participation month, sort of gathering the views of children, engaging them in different activities and helping them move forward. So just coming up, sort of the last things really, just kind of what we've learned from the Pathfinder. So one of the key things, although the YGB and the National Police Chiefs Council are diversion focused, sector and policies still have not filtered down properly, or everybody's still not on board. So in terms of the Pathfinder, we were almost a bit at the head of the curve, and it probably would have been better to be further ahead of the curve. We were about 6 months ahead. So as we were trying to do things, we knew things were in the pipeline. Sometimes it was, let's just wait for that to happen. So for instance, the case management guidance, we've been waiting for that, but there's been a number of delays, which have then caused delays on the Pathfinder. A big thing is about balancing risk and diversion. That's been a real challenge across the youth justice services across West Yorkshire, within our own service, and just how we do that. We're trying to move to very much a strength-based, child-first way of working, whereas lots of youth justice services are very risk-orientated. And Anne-Marie did a fantastic research paper on that, which is well worth looking at, just about how we look to move forward on that. It's about developing that multi-agency approach, and that it's coordinated. It's not the sole responsibility of the Youth Justice Service, and it's about building them partnerships and getting that buy-in. It hasn't been easy. We've been looking at it for both Bradford and West Yorkshire, and it's very difficult to kind of develop a model in Bradford with the view it's going across West Yorkshire, and there's 2.6 million people across West Yorkshire, so it's a big area. And they're big services, youth justice services, that are operating within this area. So it is a challenge. We've encountered a few challenges on that. It's crucial to get a senior buy-in, especially with the police. I've had to move up the ranks, each doing presentations, moving up the ranks, and just getting that buy-in. I've had to pull a few strings, speak to people in the Youth Justice Board, speak to Claire and her team at Justice Innovation, just about how I can get that moved up to do that. Just to say that this is a rapidly changing area. Within the last 2 years, diversion has changed absolutely. We're seeing it much more often. The YGB have been doing research into this area of work, and also the new turnaround. So that way of working is, it really changed the dynamics and the way that we're moving forward. And then just some top tips for getting started. If you're looking at this area in your area, so set up a steering group, get people on board. They need to be of a senior level so that they can hopefully make some of those decisions. Get the CPS, get the PCC or the Mayor's Office, the Youth Justice Services, get the police on board, early help, all the different agencies that make up that early help and diversion work, then get them on board. Peer support is absolutely crucial because it is tough. You will challenge yourself, challenge your proposals, and it's good to have someone to lean on to just give you some of that, some of that guidance and support. I think this is more to do with me in terms of my learning. I was always looking at perfection. I've gone with absolute what I thought was perfection to the steering group, and they've been a critical friend, and things will always change. So I guess crucially, get an idea pulled together, go with that, and then it will always change and move. So it doesn't always have to be perfect. Just start getting that ball moving. Learn other people's languages, such as the police. That is absolutely crucial. If you're trying to get them on board, move them forward. Create your pitch. Look for small wins and small gains to gain that momentum and help move forward. Get some training in for your staff and or whoever's looking to do this, just to get them on board with the whole theory around diversion and moving forward. And don't wait to make it perfect. Trial and error. We've learned a lot from trying things out and piloting it and kind of moving forward. So test the model for rolling it out and have a lot of different contingencies. I think I'm on about my D contingency plan. You'll need it. It is, you know, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. So, and regular, we have out of court disposal leads meetings for West Yorkshire, which we do, and then we've got the evaluation that's been done by the Joseph Rowntree Fund. So, and that's it in a nutshell, really. So, is there any questions? I know I've talked an awful lot. It's been a lot of PowerPoint. I've got some guest speakers who is going to talk more about some of the different services that are in Bradford and how we work together. But has anybody got any questions before we move on? So I've just got Nick Haig. So we're working closely with the police early action team, which is a new team that's been set up, and that's being led by Nick. Nick, I'm just going to pull your presentation up. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that, and I'll definitely send things out.
Thanks, Phil. Just checking you can hear me.
Yeah, can hear you. You've got about 4 minutes, Nick. Sorry, I know you.
I'll rattle through. I'll be as quick as I can.
Apologies.
And obviously, I've got Sergeant Kerry Feathers, who manages the team, with me, should there be any tricky questions at the end. So first of all, if we start with slide 1, Phil, obviously in Bradford, we've got a significant shared history of partnership working to reduce demand and make districts safer for all. In 2019, the district undertook a full early help project, which included 21 key partners. Part of this saw an all-age approach piloted in Keighley. We're supported by this by a liaison and diversion team who funded an officer for Keighley and provided a PC and 2 PCSOs to pilot that approach. Whilst it took place during COVID, we saw sufficient green shoots to see that that approach was effective and the right thing to do. In addition, the wider partnership's undertaken a review of its early action and preventative approach, and that too is moving towards a locality approach. So if we could just jump onto the next slide, Phil. This has probably been said many times during today and the inputs, but crisis intervention's really expensive, and actually the sooner you can intervene, the more effective those preventions can be. To quote Desmond Tutu, there comes a point where we need to stop pulling people out of the river and just go upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. So that was the ethos really that we embraced around our early prevention and early action offer across the district, with those aims to reduce crime and victimisation amongst children and young people, reduce repeat missing episodes, reductions in calls for service from those high intensity users, and reduce number of youths entering the criminal justice system. Next slide. So in terms of that, then we adopted a district locality model. This is a pictorial of it. We've got as early action hub, which sits at the heart of it. That contains our researchers, our liaison and diversion officers, and then there's 5 hubs across the district, which are co-located in some level, whether that's virtual or actual. Each hub consists of a neighbourhood support officer, the linked in with the ASB officer, and then you've got the supporting families officer, an early action PC and 2 early action PCSOs. The way they work then, in terms of the continuum of need, if you just skip to the next one, Phil. So at level 1, that universal offer, we have a number of PCSO-led interventions. At level 2 of the continuum of need, we have the early action PCs. And level 3, we have those supporting families PCs for those slightly more complex that need longer term intervention support, guidance, and that case management approach. I'll keep that relatively light touch, because I assume majority of people are aware of the continuum of need, and I'm conscious of the time that we've got. If we just skip forward then to the next one. So in terms of what's working then, we've undertaken a great deal of joint training, many partnership inputs, including the Art of the Brilliance, Phil, that yourself arranged earlier this week. We've had strength-based conversation training, CCE training, early help module training. We have direct access to local authority systems. Officers are trained in trauma-informed practice. We've undertaken a lot of preventative activity. For example, we're currently supporting Leeds United at 50% of the high schools in Bradford district in delivering scenario-based classroom inputs, specifically in relation to knife crime. We do school cyber inputs, and we do other targeted preventive inputs to equip people with the skills that they need. We undertake daily locality meetings. Present at that's YGS, liaison and diversion, where we discuss individual cases to adopt that whole family holistic lead practitioner approach. We try not to be hindered by processes. It's about doing the right thing for the individual in the circumstances that are put there, rather than following a process. And with that ethos, we put the person who needs the support at the centre of everything we do, adopting the child first principles. We have a unique, police have a unique role in this. This isn't about our officers doing social work or taking on liaison and diversions work or youth justice work. This is about us engaging, sometimes supporting people in the moment of crisis to get them to engage and support with other agencies. We ensure that people only tell the story once, and then we navigate them through and coordinate services around them. Promoting that conversation, strength-based conversation model, utilising the strengths of an individual and the family, promoting that self-care resilience with a consistent focus on well-being, prevention and early help, always aiming to step down.
Sorry, I'm really mindful of time, so just thank you for that. Just because I've got one more speaker, but I think we might have run out of time. So, Andrea, I'm really sorry. Nick, thank you for that. And I think just for those on the call, really, that's what's linking in with our turnaround work. So, and especially with L&D, because they're picking up some of those, the NFAs and the RUIs, and it's crucial that we're working in partnership with the police early action team to look at each child, and especially around the sort of triage side of things. So that's crucial. Andrea, I am so sorry. I think we've run out of time, but I'm just mindful we've got 1 minute. Andrea was our health manager, so who oversees health support and has been integral to ensuring that children get health support that all come through our panel, regardless of what they got, they all get. Look, could you summarise it in 2 minutes, Andrea? Did you do that? Sorry.
You know, once I get started, I can't stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to say, in terms of the work that's been happening with the Youth Justice Service, it's been an absolute privilege to see the progress that's been made since the inspection. While I'm name nurse for Youth Justice, CAMS and speech and language don't quite sit under me. Hopefully in the future, they will do, but I oversee the nurses, and the nurses, like Phil says, have been an integral part. We had to rewrite the offer. It wasn't an easy task at all, changing historical practice, etc. But we have just under 2 whole-time equivalent nurses who support all the meetings, all the young people that come into the Youth Justice Service now. For whatever reason, are contacted and have a health assessment. If they're refused first time, the nurses aren't giving up on them. They're going back out, persevering. An example is this afternoon, one of the nurses is out at the allotment doing a health assessment, being creative, seeing the young person that way. What we've been able to do from the work and that's been happening is we have secured funding for a nurse to support with the BEST project. I know that John's not here this afternoon, but our nurses kind of picked that work up in the interim, led with that, and like I say, funding has been secured, and also we're in the recruitment early stages, aren't we, Phil?
Yeah.
To recruit a specialist nurse to undertake the prevention work, just because Phil challenged me with a dip sample of some children, and I think it would be fair to say that our senior managers, Phil, were absolutely horrified by what I found. For me, it didn't surprise me, because what we are seeing coming into youth justice is mirroring the children in need, children in care that are coming into the service, the huge needs by the time that they reach our service. That is a very quick, I've tried to be as quick as I could. So any questions, I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll send a slide over to Phil to share with you all.
That's been brilliant, Andrea. And I mean, it's crucial. You've been doing fantastic work with the Youth Justice Service. This has been around sort of out-of-court disposal panel, particularly, and the chance to change and the turnaround that you're going to be working closely with us on that. Them children of that list, of that deep dive, were the potential turnaround children that were coming through just to prick ears, and kind of, I guess that was based on historic liaison with Tom Dukes, who said get health on board, and I always have done, and this just gave me that extra evidence to do that. So I'm really mindful of time. We've just overrun by 2 minutes. Has anybody got any questions? I'm mindful that I did have a panel in case we needed. We had Anna, we've got Sam, we've got Rebecca Gilmore and things, but there's been a lot of information. I will send you the slides. It will have my details on. Any questions, more than happy to help and support, although I am off for half term for a well-earned break. So has anybody got any questions before we log off? No, thank
Just
you.
to say, if there are any questions that go in the chat that we haven't managed to answer during the presentation, we'll include them with an email that will come out to participants afterwards with an answer, but after your well-earned break.
That's brilliant. Thank you all for your time. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate you dialing in. So thank you, and thank you for all those that have supported me in this session. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Well done, Phil, and everyone. Thank you so much.